So what we have here is one of the, not the mini micro compacts, but a compact Phalaenopsis that was purchased at a florist shop. So we know that this is not potted up for its continued good health. These come into the country. They were raised usually in Taiwan. And this one is in sphagnum moss. Now this is a medium that I like, but they grow it very differently in Taiwan. So you're going to find that when we open this up, it's very compacted and there's not enough root mass. Now this is a typical grower presentation where the orchid came in from Taiwan here, and this was value added potted. So it's just got this heavy sphagnum wrap around, and already this is solid, okay? This plant has been grown basically to be thrown away. This is a pot plant for pot plant market, and it's going to be very difficult for you to grow this on, which you can grow it on, as it's potted presently. Now normally I might wait until the flowers are faded, but when I pot into sphagnum moss as the receiving medium, I find that I usually don't get bud blast. So now repotting for an orchid is removing all of the old medium. And we remove the old medium because it retains salts, and this is a salt-sensitive plant. So where is saltburn? See that crusty stuff? All right, that is saltburn. That is saltburn right there. And what it does is it kills the root tips. All right, see how that's blackened? And it retards root growth. And as an orchid grower, you don't want that. That's the wrong direction. You want lots of good roots. So when you repot largely because the medium has compacted. And when it comes from Taiwan, it is very densely packed. That does not work in the mid-Atlantic states where I am right now. That does not allow for enough air circulation within the root mass. So I'm going to remove all of that. So we have salt retention. It has been grown to be a throwaway plant. So when you buy it, it is not potted up for its continued good health. If you're going to grow this optimally, all right, not just survival, but thrive, then you're going to want to repot it as soon after you purchase it as possible. And like I say, we're doing this now for the sake of the video because it's here. But normally I would say to the grower, hey, if you're going to let the sphagnum moss dry crunchy on top between waterings, then you can probably do just fine holding off repotting until it drops the flowers. But the important thing when it's in sphagnum moss is you've got to let this go dry. When it's compacted like this, again, this is how it's grown in Taiwan, this is where they're grown and bred, and then shipped to the United States. It may take a couple of weeks, and that's okay. What you want to get away from is watering on a timetable, a calendar basis, because these guys don't have appointment books. They do not dry out once a week, and you will not be as successful when you grow and you water on a calendar basis. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through these roots, and I'm going to look for the outer vellum being flaccid. So when the velamen is flaccid, that part of the root is dead. Now I'm not going to cut it, because this actually is in really good shape. We got this when the shipment was fresh, so at the florist shop, people weren't able to kill the roots through overwatering. Okay. Now you might say, oh my God, that was so root bound. Not for an orchid. As an epiphyte, they cram themselves onto the tree that they live on. So this congestion of the roots, which if it were a terrestrial plant, you'd be getting the heebie-jeebies and saying, oh my God, I gotta repot that. Not so much. That's really not the push behind repotting. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure that that very center, that I don't have any of that retained medium. Because again, it's compacted, it's salty, it's killing roots, and it's not the direction that I want to go in. Now, I don't have to worry about the inner true root. I've stripped off the outer dead velamen. That's good enough. This is not going to rot or make any nasty within the pot. But now you've got this nice fluffed up root mass. How do you know what size pot? that you're going to put it in? Well, it's like trying on shoes. So this is a 6-inch azalea. This is my preferred. I prefer azalea. Azalea is a shorter pot in relationship to the width. And what that does is, well, in case you've not noticed, plant roots grow out, they don't grow down. So a very deep pot forces those roots to go down, and that's not the way they want to grow. Also, from commercial plant growing, there is a condition called a perched water table. So when you pour water in the top, it goes down pretty rapidly, and then it slows down in this lower part of the pot. So if I were to do a standard pot, which would be about down here where my finger is, you'd have a larger perched water table where the water is retained. So this is a 6. Nah, too much room, too loosey-goosey. So this is a 5. Yeah, this is probably where I'm going to end up. Yeah. This is good. And the 4 you can see would just be way too small. So I'm going to put it in the 5-inch, and I'm right-handed, but I guess when I repot I'm ambidextrous. I'm going to hold the crown, okay, right there at this level, because that's going to be my finished height of my medium. And I center it because this is a monopodial orchid, so its whole growth is up. It doesn't go out, it goes up. So I'm going to center it. I'm going to make sure that those roots are kind of loose in the middle. And then I'm going to take it over here where I have premium New Zealand sphagnum moss. This has been fluffed and moistened, so it's not drippy. It's not drippy, but it is moist. And I take tufts of it and I kind of work it down around the roots with my fingers. I'm not packing it, and that is the secret with sphagnum moss. You want to keep it very airy and fluffy all the way through. All right. And again, not packing. I'm just kind of like tickling it in between the roots with my fingers. Start at the bottom, loosely placing it, and then work my way up. The important thing is that you don't want any sphagnum moss over that crown area where those leaves clasp. Remember, this guy's an epiphyte, and he's actually having some root exposure. Is perfectly fine. He's happy that way. It's more like home. So exposed roots, you don't have to be really, oh my gosh, I've got to do this, I've got to cover it up, because this guy has a different root structure than terrestrial plants. So now, let's say if you have Phalaenopsis with roots coming out in between the leaves, don't worry about it. That's the way they grow in nature, and they're perfectly fine. All right, and we'll finish this off just by tucking it in there. Remember, the first time you do it, keep it fluffy. Less is more. If it settles a little bit, you think, oh my gosh, did I put in enough? Don't stress. It's fine. You can always go back and put in a couple more tufts of this. Again, this is premium New Zealand sphagnum moss, and you can get it on Amazon, of course, but generally your local orchid supply person will have it. All right, so there we go. I'm going to restake that inflorescence, and the other important thing is I always tag when I've repotted. So this is 12 of 19. I'm going to slip that guy right in there, and that way you have a record. You can also note like times of bloom on that, but that becomes my movable record. I usually encourage people to take a picture, stick it in a file in your computer so that you know on December of 19, this is what it looked like. Your next blooming next year should be as much or more flowers than what you have now, and that's our goal. So this will get watered in, a little dusted off in little pieces, and it's ready to go back on the light shelf.